Hi and welcome to today's Mishna Brura learning. Today we are doing chapter 90, numbers 10, 11 and 12. Keshe omedi matzibur, when he stands with the community, asur lo lehakdim tfilato letfilat tzibur. It is forbidden to him to make early his prayer to the prayer of the community. Don't rush on ahead. Eli im kain, unless Hasha'a overet, the time is passing, ve'ena tzibur mitpalalim, and the community is not praying. Lefi shem ma'arichin, because they are extending b'piyutim. Piyutim is really prayer poetry. Say a piyut. We don't say it we don't have too many piyutim around anymore. That used to be a big part of the service. Or l'siba acheret, or for another reason. Aval b'lo sha'averet, but if the time is not passing, then yitzpalel piyutim v'hatchinot, you should pray the piyutim with tchinot, another kind of prayer poetry, imatzibur, with the community. V'lo yifrosh min hatzibur, do not separate from the community, afilu la'asok b'divrei Torah, even to be engaged in words of Torah. So don't say, yes, I've got the time, but I would rather spend my time learning than davening with the community. No, you should daven what the community is davening. Number 11. Someone who has a shul in his home, in his city, be'iro, in his city. Ve'eino nichnaspo, and does not enter into it. Leitpalel, to pray. Nikra shachein ra, is called a bad neighbor. Why do you never come to visit? V'goreim, and he causes galut, exile, law for himself, ulvanav, and for his children. Number 12, mitzvah larutz. It is a mitzvah to run. Kesheholech leveita knesset, when he goes to shul. V'chein lechol dvar mitzvah, and so too for any matter of mitzvah. Afilu, even. B'shabbat, on Shabbat, she'asur lifsoa psia gasa, that is forbidden to step, psia, step, gasa, literally a coarse step. In other words, these large strides we don't take on Shabbat. Shabbat, you walk nicely. Nonetheless, on Shabbat, you're still allowed to run to shul. You're still supposed to run to shul. Aval, however, keshe yaitzei, when he exits, mi beit knesset, from the shul, asur larutz, it is forbidden to run. Now let's see what the Mishna Brura says over here. Number 10, you're praying with the community. It's forbidden to go on ahead. Afal gav, even though. Devasif hakodem katav, in the earlier paragraph he wrote, te'afiluhu b'veito, even if he's at home, yechavein, he should align. L'sha'a she'atzibur mitpalalim, to the time that the community is davening. So if you're supposed to do that at home, isn't it obvious that you're supposed to do that when you're in shul? Hainu, this is kedei, in order, she'tehei, that it should be tfilaton nishma'at, his prayer should be heard. His prayer should be together with the community. Aval, however, isura leka, a prohibition, there is not. If you didn't daven at the same time as the community when you're at home, you haven't done a prohibition. You just have missed an opportunity. If you go before the prayer of the community. When you're standing with the community and go early. Isura nami ika, a prohibition also it is. Because it's undermined, as we'll see. Over Ayin ba'orchat chaim, shekad over time, look at the orchat chaim, he wrote the reason. Because shehu kemavazeh et hatzibur, he is disgracing the community. It's one thing if you're at home and you're davening this every time. You're standing there out there with the community. And you're saying, I'd rather daven by myself than with you guys. That's a really not nice thing that you're saying. Umashma, it implies. Big Mara in the Gemara. De'afilu, even if if he wants to do this because of learning Torah, Kagon, for example, sheyesh lo shiur kavua, he has a fixed shiur, lilmod Torah tzelecha, to learn Torah by somebody. Katav habach, the Bach wrote, Dim tzarichu lemaher tfilato, if he needs to hurry his prayer. Kagon, for example, sheyotze lederech, he's going out on a trip. Yaitzei mi beit knesset, he should go out of the shul, v'yitpalel b'veito, and he should pray at home. So rather than praying in shul early, rather than go home and pray at home. Ve'efshar, it is possible. The bishvil limud Torah, because of learning Torah, gam ken mutar lasot ken. In order to learn Torah, it's also possible to do. In other words, just like you can do this thing of leaving early and davening at home if you need to go, so maybe if you need to learn Torah, you can do that as well. But what you don't do is sit there with the rest of the community and go right on ahead. V'chein mashma b'sefer Ma'amar Mordechai, it's implied in Ma'amar Mordechai in the same way. Ach sham, however, there, Iri, speaking, that's Aramaic, le'inyan, regarding the matter of tfilat musaf. Ve'efshar, and it's possible, du hadin le'inyan shacharit, that the same law applies regarding shacharit. Le'akdim tfilato, to make your prayer early. Ve'afilu rotze latzeit chutz lebeit knesset, even if he wants to go outside of the shul. Kain katav ha'magen Avraham b'shem Rivash, that's what the Magen Avraham wrote in the Rivash. Aval b'sefer Ma'amar Mordechai katav da'ein midiver Rivash raya. He wrote that there is not, from the words of the Rivash, a raya, a proof. It's not obvious from the words of the Rivash that that's really what we're saying. Umasik, and he concludes. Da'ein bo isur demakdim tfilato. It does not have a prohibition of making his prayer early. Ela dalav shapir avad. It's just that it's not good what he did. If you're davening in the shul, that's really problematic. You go outside of the shul to do your own davening, it's not prohibited, but it's not good. De mafsid, he loses. Miha, at least. Tfilat hatzibur, prayer together with the communities. That's at the very least, you're losing prayer with the community. Hashal verit, if time is passing. Mashma, this implies. Da'az, that then, afilu b'veit knesset shari. So if time is passing and I need to go on ahead and they're busy doing all their davening, so then even in the shul, shari, that's Aramaic, permissible. V'chein muchach, and so too it is proven. Lashon Talmidei Rabbani Yonah, the expression, the language of the students of Rabbani Yonah, that's a commentary on the Gemara. Ve'abach pasak, the Bach rules, Dafka she'azman katzar, only when the time is short, kol kach, so much. She'ba'od she'yelech leveito, whilst he is still going to his home, yavor zman tefillah, the time for prayer will actually pass. He's actually going to miss out the time for prayer. Aval im yesh zman yelech leveito v'yitpalel b'yachid. But if there is time, then rather than going ahead and shul, you should go home and pray by himself. Ein Shem, take a look there. It's a big Gemara. It is in the Gemara. De'im chalash libo. Literally, if his heart is weak, which means if he's feeling faint, yachol litpalel b'veito kodam hatzibur. He is able to pray in his home before the community. Uveveit hakneset af ze asur. But in the shul, or even this would be forbidden. Ein Shem Kukiyot Dalet. Take a look, chapter 114, paragraph 2. De'im hu chole. If he is sick, or anus, or forced, even in shul, that would be permissible. Ken katva bach ve'aprisha shana, so the bach and the prisha wrote there. She yeshlo. So this is now saying somebody who has a shul in his city and doesn't go there is called a bad neighbor. Im yesh beir. If there are two shuls in the city, tov leilech laharachoka. It is good to go to the further one. Kischar psiot yesh, because there is a reward for steps. The more you walk, the more reward you get. So if you go to a further shul every day, then that's a good thing. Nikra shachen ra is called a bad neighbor. Why? Dekain derech shchenim, the way of neighbors, haraim of bad neighbors. Shenichnasin leveit chavreim, they do not enter into the houses of their friends. Va'ayin b'achronim shekatfu, take a look in the later authorities who wrote, she'afilu, even if ein sham minyan asara, there is not a minyan of 10. That guy says, why should I go to shul? They don't have a minyan in the shul. Still, this law applies. Daha, stama katani, because it was taught, stam, unqualified. But the Pri Megadim is in doubt. It doesn't really apply if they aren't having a minyan. Okay, there's two opinions on that. Whether a shul is intrinsically something you're a bad neighbor if you don't go. If he prays at home when there's 10 people, b'chol gavne, in any manner, he is not called a bad neighbor. Because anytime that you have 10 people, Bayasara, Shchinta, that means the Shechinah, it's the Aramaic for Shechinah, the presence of Hashem, Sharia resides. So there's the presence of Hashem. So what, you're a bad neighbor for not going to a shul, but you got a minyan, so you got the presence of Hashem. Umihu, however, I'll call Panim, at the very least. Midei chovat beit hakneset lo yafak. From the obligation of a Beit Knesset, of a shul, lo nafek, he has not gone out. Literally, in other words, he has not fulfilled his obligation of shul. So the obligation of davening, the obligation of presence of Hashem, which comes from a minyan, the obligation of shul as such is not fulfilled. Elim kain, unless oto hamakom shemitpalelin bo kavod lekadusha. That place in which they pray is fixed for holiness. As we'll see later on, different kinds of buildings, shuls or Batei Midrash where you study. Shachem is called a bad neighbor. Dechtiv, Ko Amar Hashem, this is what it says. So says Hashem, Al kol shchene haraim, all of my bad neighbors, forgot me. Hineni not sham me'al admatam. Behold, I move them from their land. Bad neighbor is moved from his land. So that's why being a bad neighbor causes exile. V'chol hamashkim umariv beit hakneset. Anyone who gets up early, umariv, and stays late at the shul, zoche, merits la'arichat yamim, long days. In other words, a long life. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Ashrei Adam, fortunate is the man, Shomer li, who listens to me, Lishkod, to be diligent, Al daltotai, over my doors, Yom Yom, day by day. Uchtiv acharav, and it says afterwards, Ki motza'ai motzai chayim. Motza'ai, those who have found me. Matzah, have found life. Number 12, it is a mitzvah to run when you go to shul, even on Shabbos. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, that neida'ah, we will know. Nirdafa, we will chase. Leda'at et Hashem, to know God. So we see we chase after, we run after the knowledge of God. Umizeh nilmad, from this we learn, the kol shekain, how much more so, sheyesh lizaher, you should be careful. As shelo la'amod be'emtza derech, to not stand in the middle of the road, le'asiach im chaveiro, to chat to his friend, with his own business of himself. Ki al yedei, through this, matsui, it is common, sheba'achar baruchu kedusha, that he comes after baruch and kedusha. V'ayim b'frisha shekatav, and take a look in the Prisha who wrote, the ikar, the primary haritza of running, yeke sheba samuch leveit hakneset, is when he comes close to the shul. The sham minkar, then it is recognizable. Who she osel l'shem mitzvat beit hakneset, that he's doing it for the mitzvah shul. In other words, you're running from your house 10 minutes away. Okay, so Hashem knows, but when you run up close to the shul, the whole world can see that you are running for shul. V'katav Pri Megadim wrote, the v'shacharit sheholech im talit utfilin biado, that for shacharit, when he walks with talis and tefillin in his hand, tamid minkaru, it is always recognizable. So if he's running with a talit and tefillin in his hand, then we know why he's running, and then that's a mitzvah from the get-go. Umikol makom, nevertheless, berachov akum, in a street of non-Jews, lo yarutz, he should not run. Now, he doesn't explain why, but I would imagine it's because it's a lack of dignity, or it won't be properly seen or understood. Then he says, larutz, to run, ad petach beit hakneset, until the entrance of the shul. Uvebeit hakneset atzma, and in the shul itself, asur larutz, it is forbidden to run. Ele yelech ba'ema, rather you should walk with reverence. B'Shabbat shasur, on Shabbat where it's forbidden to run. V'af b'chol noto echad mechamesh me'os mimorei nav shel adam. Even chol is the weak. It takes, notel, these kind of arrogant steps, take 1 out of 500 from the light of the eyes of a person. A person loses a little of the light of his eyes with these big, coarse, wide steps. V'am Pri Megadim, take a look at Pri Megadim. Asur larutz, forbidden to run. V'lo lifsop gasa, not to take big steps. Lefi shemare atzmo, you shouldn't leave shul running, and you shouldn't leave shul with these big strides. Lefi, because shemare atzmo, he shows himself, she'ikuv beit hakneset dome alav kamasui, that staying in the shul seems to him kamasui, like a burden. What's this speaking about? When he's going to his own needs. Aval. If he's going on condition to return, mitzvah lorutz kedei lachzor maher. It is a mitzvah to run in order to return quickly. And so too, if he goes from the shul to the Beit Midrash, to the house of study, in order to study Torah. That's it for today.